Frank Yearby's Judas My Brother. Book 4, in which I became more deeply involved in the affairs of Yeshua the Nazarene, witnessed some miracles, work to myself, and at the cost of considerable hurt to my poor flesh, acquire myself a bride. Chapter 16. The winter that encompassed, by your Roman calendar, of course, the end of the 14th and the beginning of the 15th years of Tiberius Caesar's reign, had been an exceptionally rainy one, so much so that it seemed that nature, out of some inner sense of balance, wanted to make up for the drought of the previous summer. In Judea, at least as far as I was concerned, the almost continual downpour had had no more serious effect than to slow the work upon Pilatus's aqueduct, to the extent that I hadn't been able to complete it until spring. But to the north, in Galilee, and especially on my uncle Hezron's estate, it proved a near disaster. All my uncle's terraces had been damaged by the great sheets of water pouring down from the hills on and behind his domain. Even our lake had overflowed at one time, with the result that much valuable topsoil had been washed and scoured away from our best vineyards and from our orchards of fruit trees, both of which stood on terraces cut into the slopes of the hills, since, naturally enough, we reserved the richer lowlands for the more important grain crops and vegetables, as the custom was in Galilee. So it was hardly to be wondered at that, on my return from my errand of mercy, I found my uncle Hezron by nature inclined to a melancholy that neither the loneliness of his life nor the behavior of his lone, dearly beloved nephew were calculated to ameliorate, in a state bordering upon despair. Therefore, I decided to do something about the condition of the estate. In sober fact, I had to. For to follow my father's example and to enter into the priesthood as cynically as he had, or more so, because he at least retained some faint vestiges of belief, while I had none, seemed to me an outrage against my personal integrity, my dignity as a man. And the only other two professions I had any command of, those of a professional scribe and a builder of aqueducts, were certain to keep my belly constantly groaning from hunger. A scribe simply wasn't paid enough to live in the rather luxurious manner to which I had become accustomed, and since Caesar had sent out another engineer to the Cohors Italica to replace the one whose death had given me the opportunity of building Pilatus's aqueduct, I wasn't likely to get a chance to construct another watercourse as long as I lived. Now, the choice between almost any kind of work and starvation is easy enough, but in my case, it was made easier still by the fact that I actually liked farming, and preferred country life to being cooped up in the city. In any event, to end my days submerged in the miserable boredom of my grandfather Boethus's counting house, the sole other chance I had was the one thing I wasn't going to do. I honestly believe I would have starved first. So much did I hate the very idea. My uncle Hezron's estate would afford me opportunity enough, for it was one of the biggest in Galilee. Managed right, it would provide us with real wealth. But it wasn't being managed right. My uncle's methods were too conservative to permit us to get the profits, the yields from the really rich and fertile land he owned, that he should have. I knew from my year with the Essenes what scientific farming could do, even on lands as miserable as theirs were. The same excellent methods applied to my uncle's wonderful stretch of fields would perform miracles. I knew the methods. I'd learned them firsthand, working on the community farm at Feshka, under the direction of the agricultural Pequod of the Qumran sect. All I needed to apply them were men and money, or rather money and men, in that order. For once I'd pried the money out of Uncle Hezron, I could easily hire the men. But when I opened the subject for discussion, they must have heard him yelling as far south as Idumea. Money? For what? To procure yourself another harlot? Or a whole brothel full of strumpets? To spend your nights in drunkenness and wallowing with the procurator's wife in Caesarea? I have an antique sense of humor. I couldn't resist saying, "That doesn't cost me anything, Uncle. Not even a quadrans or an ass. Quite the contrary. And you've given me an idea. If you don't advance me the miserable 3 or 4 minae I need, I'll go to dear Claudia. She'll be most happy to let me have..." My uncle actually tore his simla robe, so greatly as he outraged. "A he-whore!" he roared. "A male harlot! Don't tell me that vile Roman strumpet actually paid you to... To do what, Uncle?" I said, my voice all sweet boyish innocence. "Ella he menadonai!" my Uncle Hezron screamed. "Neither one," I said solemnly. "Eros and Aphrodite, maybe. A little Astarte. Just a touch of Baal." Uncle Hezron lifted his staff, brought it crashing down. Only my training as a retiarius saved me from a broken head. I danced away from his blows until he was so out of breath that he could no longer strike or speak. Then I stood there, grinning at him, a long moment before I said, "My revered and respected Uncle Hezron, I plan to marry soon." He brought one great brush of an eyebrow down over one baleful eye and glared at me out of the other. "Who?" he croaked. "Johanna Bath Yosef," I said recklessly. "Yeshua's little sister. That is, if she'll have me." "Humph!" my uncle snorted. "Don't see why not. Yeshua is a good lad, but the rest of 'em are eme ha'arats, and dirt poor to boot." "Aha!" I said. "Now you've conceded me my point. Since the dear child cannot bring me other dowry than her sweet person, it behooves me to have a thought about my future, don't you think? Starting with this latifundium, which you, Rab Hezron, respected uncle, have let go to rack and ruin." He stared at me in outraged astonishment. "I'm not responsible for acts of God, Nathan," he said. "And that's what those rainstorms were." "True," I said. "Man cannot control the weather. But if, in times of drought, he can bring water from 3 state studies away in wet spring weather like this, he can..." "What?" my uncle growled. "Do a number of things, all of which require workmen, Uncle, who in their turn require wages. Of course, we can piddle and fiddle away at it for half a lifetime with the hands we have. Or you can let me have 4 minae, exactly 100 shekels, with which to hire 100 lakutoth for as long as I need them. Day laborers, Uncle. A few women to cook and wash for them. Not for..." I started to say something absolutely outrageous, but I changed my mind. "Not for lascivious purposes. I finished lamely. I could see from the expression on Uncle Hezron's face that I was convincing him now. Since I'd built him the aqueduct, he was beginning to concede that I wasn't altogether worthless. "Sit down, Nathan," he said quietly. "Tell me what you propose to do." By the time I'd finished, he was almost smiling. I was going to reterrace all the slopes with retaining walls of stone. At intervals of every dozen feet, I was going to leave a drainage opening so that the press of water behind them in the rainy seasons would tumble them down, as it had the old ones. That done, I proposed a major earth-moving project. My Lecototh, armed with shovels, would spade the accumulated mud washed down from the hills onto our flatlands up into carts, and carry it back where it came from in the first place. There, well mixed with a compost of manure and rotted leaves, it would make the finest orchards and vineyards in all Galilee. Uncle Hezron was tight-fisted and a conservative, but he knew sense when he heard it, and being a practical dirt farmer, he put his finger on the one weakness of my scheme at once. "Carts," he said. "We'll need dozens of them, 4 and 5 times more than we've got, and only temporarily, nephew. So it'll make no sense to buy them." "I know," I said. "I've thought of that. But did you ever see a farm that didn't have 1 or 2 laid up for repairs? I'll get Yeshua, or Jacob, or, if they can't leave the shop, as most likely they can't, Shimeon, Jose, and Yehuda to repair them at our cost, Uncle, on the condition that their owners lend them to us for the duration of the work." "Fair enough," Uncle Hezron said. "Draft animals?" "We'll have to hire them," I admitted. My uncle figured rapidly inside his head. "4 minutes won't be enough," he said. "I'll give you 5. But one thing, Nathan." "Yes, Uncle?" I said. "You supervise the work, which means you stay out of Caesarea, and also away from little Johanna. She's a sweet child, virtuous, decent. Since you plan to marry her, and I reluctantly approve, though her family are humble folk in view of the fact that your outrageous behavior has cost you any chance of marrying among our own class, leave her that way." "Uncle Hezron," I said quietly, "I'm going to tell you something strange. I haven't seen Johanna since she was 13 or 14 years old." "What?" my uncle said. "You mean that you plan to marry a girl who I know nothing about, except that she's the sister of the man I love like a brother. I believe her to be good, dutiful, pure, and not uncomely. But from what I have seen of love, it seems to me the worst possible reason for getting married. Besides, my love has unfailingly brought disaster to every woman upon whom I've bestowed it. Helvi, Shalom, Claudia." The glare was back in Uncle Hezron's eyes. His right brow crashed down like a thundercloud. "You said the bastard Shalom lost at the games," he began grimly. "Wasn't mine," I repeated. If you want me to, I'll swear by the name. But only because she left me, so that the burden of her reputation wouldn't ruin my life. Out of a certain generosity, Uncle, she loved me. She proved that at the games." "Ha!" Uncle Hezron said, but his tone wasn't entirely scornful. "And his imperial adulteress of yours? And this imperial adulteress of yours lies ill abed now, because I left her. Not because I didn't love her, Uncle. I did. With me, she was at least becoming something very fine. But there was no future in that, and I'm tired of the life I've led. I'd like to see a good woman, my wife, sitting by the fire now, carding and spinning, with my sons playing about her skirts. I'm sick to death of disorder, impermanency, lack of peace. Since with the woman I love, I never find those things, I'm prepared to sacrifice love, Uncle Hezron. But I must marry. Can't let the Benim Mathia die out, you know? Ours is a great strain. Poets, prophets, warriors. You're warlike enough, Uncle Hezron said. Did yourself a lot of good hereabouts with the younger men by killing Pilatus's butcher. All the poor devils sent against him were Jewish prisoners, as you know, and Shalom's fainting and falling down those stairs has helped you more than it's hurt with the women. I've heard things that... What things, Uncle? I said. Things you won't hear from me. You're arrogant enough. A gamecock now. But Nathan. Yes, Uncle Hezron? I told you to stay away from that child. I take that back. You'd better call. Have you spoken to Yeshua? Yes, Uncle. He approves. With reservations. He wants to see some evidence that I've retired from the competition to gain the prize as champion whoremonger of Galilee. What competition? You've won the prize already, Uncle Hezron snorted. And that of Judea as well. Hundreds of people standing in the street staring at her bedroom window while you performed in my own inimitable style, I quipped. Then soberly, there'll be one more of that, Uncle. Sorry, there'll be no more of that, Uncle. I promise you. He stared at me. Saw I meant it. Good, he said. Now you get over there. This business of the carts will provide you with excuse enough. Put on your best robes, a bit of jewelry. Ride Bedu. Fortunately, or unfortunately, you're much too handsome for your own good. A brave show never hurts with an Alma. I hear and obey, Uncle, I said. But I was strangely reluctant to go. From what I remembered of Johanna, a sapling thin slip of a girl, all membered of Johanna, a sapling thin slip of a girl, all arms and legs and eyes, topped by a great mane of black hair, almost like Shelomith's. I was afraid that growing fond of her might prove too easy, and I didn't want to love her. A curse lay upon the woman that I loved. Had I not already had proof enough of that? Yet in the end, I prepared to go. I bathed and perfumed myself first, put on my best robes, stuck a jeweled sika in my belt, hung a heavy golden chain about my neck. I must have made a splendidly barbaric sight, for as I rode away on Bedu, all the younger serving wenches in my uncle's house came out and squealed at me. I worried my added head all the way to Nazareth over what excuse I could give Yeshua that would cause him to invite me into the house, which was behind the shop itself. With my luck, I groaned inside my heart, sure as Samuel rules men's hearts. She's gone, berry-picking, or out walking with her latest light-o'-love, or... I was wrong. My luck was magnificent. The first person I saw when I turned into the street was Johanna herself. She was leaning up against the doorpost and crying her eyes out. The clatter of Beto's hoofs on the cobblestones startled her. She whirled, and for a moment I thought she was going to run. But then she saw that I was neither a Roman cavalryman nor even one of Antipas's cutthroat swine. She hung there, eyes and mouth both opened wide. My heart sank to the soles of my Roman Caligula, the short, smart riding boots I wore. She looked like what she was, a small-town Galilean wench. Worse still, at that moment, her astonishment caused her to look like what she wasn't, as I was very soon to learn. A stupid one at that. "I give you greetings, Yuan," I said, giving her name the Galilean form, but not quite. You see, I cut the final "ah" off it, which made it sound languidly elegant, a trifle Hellenistic. Her mouth closed, but her tear-brightened eyes got even bigger. Like that, I could see what Yeshu meant. She was pretty. Decidedly so. Strange, but you can nearly always trust a brother's description of his sister. The other way around, no. Most girls are blinded by their fondness for their brothers, but take away the possibility of desire. We're not Egyptians, nor Ptolemies, and a man sees a woman clear. Johanna was pretty, and something more, she was also interesting. I suppose that at this point some comparisons are in order. Physically, of the four women in my life, for Lydia never counted, she was the least attractive. About healthy, it is utterly impossible for me to be objective. She was my first real love, and all my memories of her are distorted by that fact. I know well she wasn't as beautiful as I thought her. Most people who knew her called her a pretty girl, though some were kind enough to add the qualifying adjective, very. But to me, she was, and remains, the most beautiful thing who ever drew the breath of mortal life. Shalom, now, was barbarous, splendid, exotic, gorgeous. Her beauty was the sort that drives men mad, and no one who ever saw her, including Uncle Hezron, ever called her anything less than beautiful. For, oh, she was. She was. Claudia, a pure and classic loveliness, on your Grecian mold. She might have posed for a statue of Aphrodite, except that she was rather too slim for your taste, to judge from your sculpture. Strange, she was so perfect, so harmonious of line, so cleanly carved of feature that she looked cold. The last thing on earth she was, really. But as this child, this pretty Galilean child, stared up at me, I saw intelligence, speaking with the voices of angels out of her great dark eyes. Perceived, rather, that here was a person with the force to match her mother's and the mind to soar above all her brothers, save alone Yeshua's, effortlessly. Besides that, the way she looked, and she was comely enough, mind you, few Galilean Almehim could have matched her in physical beauty. It didn't matter. With a woman such as this, life would be pure paradise, or Sheol piled atop Gehenna, with the damned souls screaming round my bed. One or the other, with nothing in between, which made the whole thing vastly interesting. I said, "I give you greetings, Yuan." I repeated a trifle sharply. The battle between us already joined the tension, already crackling like hidden lightning upon the dead, still air. "I return them, Nathan Bart Yehuda," she said quietly, "and say farewell." "Farewell?" I said. "Are you going somewhere?" "No," Johanna said. "You are." "I?" I said. "Where?" "That's up to you. friend of my brother. Anywhere at all, as long as it's away from here. I smiled at her, then. I had a good smile in those days. Many was the maid and matron who had told me so. But she didn't waver. She said, "Be so kind as to leave me, Nathan, now." I swung down from Bidu, came toward her. A lesser one would have shrilled and scampered away by then. But Johanna didn't move. She stood there, looking at me, with her eyes getting bigger and bigger until they almost eclipsed her tiny, heart-shaped face. But when I was close enough, I could see the anger in them. It was cold and still, like frozen flame. "Why do you want me to go away, Yuan?" I said. "Because I'm alone in the house. Mama and my brothers have gone after Yesu to bring him back. They think he's gone mad." "Why do they think that, little Yuan?" I said. "Because he's left the shop. Now he's going around preaching as though he were a rab. When he found out that Herod Antipas had put Johanan Baptist in prison, he—" "Yohanan in prison?" I said. "I didn't know that." "There are a great many things you don't know, my Lord Bar Yehuda. But now's not the time to talk about them. We've troubles enough in this family without your adding to them. Just when we were beginning to lift our heads a little, Yesu has to turn Galilean, itinerant. Oh, the disgrace of it. So now, goodbye." "Now, Yuan," I said gently, "that's no way to treat an old friend." The icy wrath in her eyes took fire, flamed, crackled, stood tall. "You're no friend of mine, Nathan Bar Yehuda," she said, "and you're becoming less one every second that you stand there." "Why?" I said. "Because you're you. You've been here 5 minutes at least, long enough to cause talk. If you stay here another 5, I'll be in serious trouble. Half an hour, I'd might as well go down to Kefir Nahum and take your Shelemith's place in Nico's Lupinar for all the reputation I have left. So will you do me the great favor of getting back upon that horse and riding away from here?" I liked the way she said, "your Shelemith." It had a trifle too much edge to it, a fine excess of bitterness. I knew then I had some hope. I didn't say anything. The time for talk was past. What was needed now was action. I stepped in close to her, caught her face between the iron fingers of my left hand, bent and kissed her mouth. A good long time before she tore it away from mine with a strangled sob. I was poised to catch her hand as she swung it to slap my face. But she didn't even attempt to. Instead, she said in a tone of voice that was like broken glass grating over rock, "Don't go. Wait here a moment." Then she whirled and went back into the shop. 3 minutes later, no more, she came back again. She had a basin in her hand, a clean white cloth, a jar of soft, homemade wood ash and olive oil soap. She put the basin down upon the doorstep, then with her great eyes locked upon my face, holding me like that as effortlessly as Yeshua's himself could, she proceeded with slow ceremony, with appalling dignity, with ritual care, to scrub my mouth. The insult was absolutely deadly. The rage that hit me was like a poniard hard driven and quivering in my gut. But it was coupled with sickness, because she had beaten me. This slip of a girl, armed and girt about with that monumental dignity of hers, had beaten me. By maintaining a self-control I'd never seen before in a woman. by showing me not anger, but contempt. And that knife wasn't in my big gut anymore. It was further down. Such things as this emasculate a man. I turned away from her, marched back to Beto, swung myself into the saddle with less than my usual grace, sat there looking at her, until I saw that cold, still anger in her dark eyes thaw, but not into rage this time. Into confusion? Pity? Remorse? I didn't know. And I didn't need to. Something in me instructed me. Uncle Hezron would have called it my unclean cunning. I, by bone-deep knowledge of the ways of women, but it was something else, something deeper, even more worthy than either. What to say? So I said it, slowly, clearly, and with great calm. Farewell, Johanna. Scrub away. Use a stronger soap. Put hot irons to your lips. But you'll carry the feel and taste of my kiss down to your grave, for all the good that it will do you now. Then I yanked Beto's head about and rode away. As I reached the corner, I looked back. Even from there, I could see the great tear streaks penciling her face. But I rode on without stopping. To have returned then would have spoiled things, softened the impact of the blow. I'd clearly dealt her, and I didn't want to soften it. I wanted her to reflect upon it, feel it like a bruise deep in her heart, her mind. I rode away from Nazareth, up the Roman road that runs through the village of Cana to Migdal, Nunaya, and from thence to Kepher Nahum. I went that way because simple logic demanded that Yeshua should begin his preaching somewhere along that road, since it ran through the most thickly populated parts of Galilee. I was terribly worried about him, the fool. Hadn't the news of Yohanan Baptist being thrown into Herod's dungeon shown him what happened to anyone who attracted too much attention now? I was right. Before I got to the great town, almost a city, for even then the word Kepher, village, no longer described it, of Nahum, I saw the crowds. They were immense, as great or greater than those who'd followed Yohanan. From my high vantage point on horseback, I could both see and hear Yeshua's. He was preaching to the people in parables. I listened long enough to hear that he told them exceedingly well, but though I have a collection of his words written by Matthew, the publican, I cannot remember which of the many parables therein contained he spoke on that particular day. Besides, once I saw that there were neither soldiers nor any known spies about, I realized that the danger of his being arrested on that particular day was slight, and that his technique of speaking in parables was a wise one, so that even if he were haled before Antipas, nothing rebellious could be proved against him. Therefore I had time. I began to look about for his mother and his brothers, so that I might talk to them about the necessary work of saving my uncle's farm, despite Johanna's icy and insulting rebuff to me. I was far from despairing or losing all hope of winning her love. But even if I should fail to win her, the work must go on. I had to wed, preserve my father's line. That was my sacred duty. I wasn't in love with little Yuan yet, though, knowing myself, I sadly feared I could get to be, and in the worst of cases, should she reject me, I could easily find another winsome Galilean lass with less scruples as far as wedding a man of my fearsome ill fame was concerned, especially when my actual rank and reputed wealth were taken into consideration. But I didn't find Yeshua's family at that moment. I might not ever have found them if a little group of women standing nearby had not let out an astonished gasp at the sight of me. I didn't know any of them, but the face of one, a really lovely woman about 30 or 35 years of age, was strangely familiar. I've seen that one before somewhere, I thought. But where? In the names of Baal and Beelzebub, both. Where? And then, as though beckoned by my eyes, that woman separated herself from her companions and came up to Bedou's flank. "Sir," she said in a soft, dark-toned, honey, dulcet voice, "who are you that you look so very like our Lord?" "Nathan Bar Yehuda," I said shortly. "Oh," she gasped, "he of whom they say that Shalom the harlot tried to kill herself over, and that the Epitropus' wife and—" "half 100 more," I said wearily. "Take care I don't add you to my list, O dark sister of my heart. Now tell me, who are those women?" "That one's Johanna, the wife of Shuza Antipas, steward. That's Susanna, and that's Miriam, mother of Jacob. That's Shelomith, and that's—" "Enough," I laughed. I need not mention, of course, that the Shelomith she indicated was not my Shelomith, any more than the Johanna, Shuza's wife, was my Johanna. We have a strange paucity of women's names, which makes for great confusion. And the commonest name of all among us is Miriam. I've known at least 20 Miriams in my lifetime. "Now tell me, lovely creature," I said, "to whom presently I shall offer my vagrant heart, just who are you?" "Miriam," she said simply. "Miriam what?" I said. "Miriam of Migdal. Nunaya," she said. I came very close to falling from the saddle. Of course, I'd known that face, but this was the first time I could remember seeing it clean. She was well dressed, too, in simple robes that were nonetheless of rich stuffs. I knew she owned a latifundium, not much smaller than my uncle's, inherited from her father on his death, and it was a tribute to the superstitious awe in which mad people are held in Galilee, that not a Zereth nor a Topha had been stolen from her boundaries. But she couldn't have put it back into cultivation yet. Since I brought Yeshua's back from Judea, there simply hadn't been time. "That's a very pretty dress, Miriam," I said. "It was my mother's," she said. "I found it in the great chest in my house. Oh, I might as well tell you, since you probably know all about me. I had to search for clothes when I went back home, after he, my sweet Lord, cast 7 devils out of me. Before that, I was mad. That's why I went around in rags and was so filthy. So don't offer me your heart. I belong to him, and only him. Besides, I don't want your heart. It's a very wicked one, from all I've been told. Oh, Sheol, I said. Tell me, Miriam Magdalene, do you know where I can find his mother and his brothers? Yes, she said. Get down from your horse, and I'll take you to them. As I walked along beside the Magdalene, I couldn't help but stare at her. Clean, nearly dressed, her hair combed and perfumed, she was a woman of extraordinary beauty. But she wasn't entirely present. Not completely there, if you understand my meaning. Yeshua had calmed her, made her almost sane. I say almost because there were signs that madness lingered in her still. Even her simplicity, her serenity, were odd. Her total obliviousness to the grins and meaningful looks that were cast at her as she walked by my side. For Johanna had been right. For a woman to be seen with me was to risk her reputation. So great and so widespread was my evil fame. When we came up to the place where Yeshua's mother and brothers were standing on the edges of the crowd, I could see the despair in their faces. Jacob, of course, wasn't with them. To him, I realized, Yeshua's behavior couldn't have been a cause for grief because it differed but little from his own, except I'm sure he would never have thought of preaching. But to the other members of the Bainim Yosef family, it was a disaster. You see, they were beginning to go up in life. The shop was prospering. Susanna, the elder daughter, had married very well indeed. People were beginning to consider them a cut above the Emaharats, the poor, unlettered peasant stock from which they sprang. Miriam's ambitions for her sons were towering, and now here was Yeshua's disgracing them all, descending to the level of the wild, itinerant preachers, whom the idle city mobs and ignorant country yokels delighted in. We produced a flock of these half-mad fanatics every year, spitting on people to cure them of their sicknesses, and performing all kinds of trickery which the simple-minded Galileans saw as miracles. Of course, it is written in the Talmud and Midrash that such learned doctors as Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai and Elazar ben Harkanas, his disciple, performed true miracles. But though Ben Harkanas was of my and Yeshua's generation, I never had the chance to see him. And as for the wonders that Yeshua himself worked, and he did work wonders, I shall write of them at another time. But now, seeing the tears missing his mother's eyes, I pitied her with all my heart. Yet I was a little angry with her too. She was concerned with pride of place, with familial shame, while I was concerned with saving his life. For what he was doing now, however, innocently was sure to get him hanged. Yohanan Baptiste, who had done no more than this, who had preached no more revolutionary doctrine than repentance of sin, was already chained in a dungeon in Herod Antipas's fortress at Machaerus. And anybody who knew how Antipas's mind worked wouldn't have given a fig for the Baptist chances. Well, there they are, Miriam, the Magdalene said, and turning, left me there. I was glad she was gone. Trying to talk to two Miriams at once would have been too great a strain. I came up to where Yeshua's family stood and bowed. My lady Miriam, "The Bainim Yosef," I said. "I give you greetings, mother and brothers of our newest prophet." Instantly they whirled upon me, their faces black with anger. Then Miriam saw who I was, and her face softened. "Don't make mock of us, Nathan, in the hour of our trouble," she said. "I'm not," I said. "I honestly believe Yeshua is a prophet, and not merely a holy man like Jacob. But just as honestly, I think that these are no times for prophecy, that all, exercising such powers as Yeshua possesses, will get a man nowadays is the opportunity to decorate a cross with his poor carcass. That's why I came." Her broad-lined dark face paled a little. "You think that the Romans," she began. "Or Antipas," I said dryly. "Yohanan Baptiste did no more, and look where he is now, my Lady Miriam. All Israel is dry tinder waiting for a spark, and all unwittingly men like Yohanan and your Yeshua could provide it. The meek, the terrible meek, whose innocence is deadly." "Now look, Nathan," Shimeon began. "I am looking, Shimeon," I said. "And what's more, I have eyes with which to see. And what I see is that Israel should lie quiet, like a field left fallow, until the Romans destroy themselves, as they will, as the power-drunken always do. But I've traveled, lived abroad, in Athens, in Alexandria, in Rome, which is why men call you traitor, Nathan," Yehuda ben Yosef said. I shrugged. "Words. If you send a coursing hound out to attack a lion, what happens to that hound, however brave? You were not yet born when the last revolt occurred, Yehuda, the one in which Archelaus, Herod's son, mingled the blood of 3,000 Galileans with that of the sacrifices within the temple itself. But ask any man of more than 40 years of age how it was to see the roofs of the temple buildings burning, and the Roman Dux Sabinus marching away with the temple treasury, more than 400 talents in his hands. You're proud of Yehuda bar Hezekiah here in Galilee. But what was the result of his bravery? Sepphoris, his city, reduced to ashes, every inhabitant, man, woman, or child, sold as slaves. At that same time, 2 years before Yeshua's and I were born, there was the slave, Shimeon, of Perea, the shepherd, and Thronges in Judea, making themselves masters of the country, until Varus came from Antioch in Syria with his legions. Ask my father what it's like to see 2,000 men being crucified at the same time. So many that no matter which way you looked from Jerusalem, the horizon was black with crosses, and the air itself darkened with the carrion birds, come to beak their eyes, their poor blackened swollen tongues. Well, yet they lived. I tell you, friends, that bravery without means is criminal folly. Call me traitor, coward, what you will, but I'll oppose any revolt against the Romans now, not because I love those filthy swine. Their women don't displease you, Yehuda sneered. That you've proven, Nathan, twice. Stop it, Yehuda, Miriam said. Listen to Nathan. He speaks truth. Their women don't displease me, I said quietly. True. One I loved more than life married her in the synagogue of Alexandria, by our law. The other also I loved, enough to sin, before Israel and our God, of which I have much shame. But that is neither here nor there now. What is at hand is the fact that to arm a revolt now would be to condemn all Israel to death and slavery, which is why I, or you, or all of us have to stop Yeshua's, persuade him from this folly. My brother doesn't preach revolt, Nathan, Yosei the youngest said. He doesn't have to. Let him mouth one unguarded word, and it'll start of itself. You know how these people are, Yos. But that's not the point. Listen to me, in God's name. I love Yeshua. I want to see him live out his years. Don't you see, you fools, that he doesn't have to do anything more than he's doing now? Attract attention. Draw crowds like these. For Antipas to do with him what he's already done with Yohanan Baptistus. Who, in the name of heaven, ever told you that a man had to be guilty of rebellion in Galilee to be hanged for it? They stared at me, appalled. All they thought of was their pricky pride, the shame of being laughed at as the family of a madman. Not this true and terrible danger. Nathan, Miriam said, go to him. Tell him that we're here. Ask him to come to us. I held her with my eyes. Will he? I said. I don't know, she moaned. He's so strange, Nathan. We've never been close. All his life, I've quarreled with him. I wanted him to wed, to get grandsons for me, and he wouldn't. I wanted him to live, at least a little like other men. He's neglected the shop for years. He doesn't care whether we have anything to eat or not. I know, Miriam, I said, pityingly. I'll go call him now. Yosei, hold my mare for me. But I couldn't get anywhere near him for the crowds. So I did the next best thing. I asked the people to pass word from one to another that his mother and his brothers were without the crowd waiting for him. The people did so right gladly, happy to have a chance to do some small service for the new prophet. By the time the message reached him, the distance was too great for me to hear it said to him. But I heard him all right. He stood up, and his eyes flashed a wrath that made a man who'd brought my message tremble. Who is my mother? He thundered. Who are my brothers? And then slowly, impressively, he waved a hand over the heads of the crowd. His voice deepened, darkened as he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother, my sister, my mother. I came away from Kfar Nahum with them. I pointed out to them truthfully that the danger of Yeshua's being arrested by either the Romans or Herod Antipas was not immediate. I promised them that I would use whatever influence I had with Yeshua's to get them to desist from this folly. But my words helped little. They were all downcast, angry, and terribly ashamed. I was simply angry. Yeshua's public rebuke to his family seemed to me both outrageous and uncalled for. To get their minds off it, I started telling them of my plans for Uncle Hezron's place. Asked their help. They agreed readily enough. For one thing, I was willing to pay them well, and they needed the money. For another, even Yehuda and Shimeon, neither of whom particularly liked me, were a little chastened by Yeshua's action. Besides, the whole family knew I'd saved his life in the desert of Judea, because he'd told them that. The business of the carts settled, there remained one great problem, that of Johanna. I had sense enough to realize for once that cunning, deviousness, would get me nowhere. With these lowly, uncomplicated people, honestly was not only the best, but the only feasible policy. But I hadn't counted upon two factors that, knowing men, I should have plain rut-dog male jealously, and the unexpected depth of Shimeon's and Yehuda's dislike for me. That jealousy, that dislike, had a most understandable basis. Everything I was, rich, well-born, even handsome, they would have liked to be. Everything I'd done, traveled, drunk deep of life, fought and killed the bravest foemen, lain with the most excitedly forbidden of foreign women, titillated their dull imaginations, and awoke in them that most miserable of all emotions, envy. But I was too intent upon my course to realize that then. "My lady Miriam," I said, "would you oppose my paying court to Johanna? With the intention of marrying her, I mean?" "What?" Yehuda and Shimeon bellowed in one voice. Yosi said nothing. Yosi had always liked me, been my friend, almost as much as Yeshua himself. Miriam's great dark eyes, Yeshua's and Yuan's, were the same, and got from her softened. Miriam, too, was fond of me. I was, within certain limits, of course, precisely the kind of man she had wanted Yeshua to be. Besides, to the mother of a marriageable daughter, I had a great deal to recommend me. I was, on both sides, from almost princely family, and I was, or would be surely when I inherited, from my mother and my uncle, both rich. In fact, though, I knew from Yeshua that Miriam had dreamed aloud of just this possibility. I don't think she dared consider it seriously. The Bainim, Yosef, were Amaharites, the outcast of Israel, those ignorant of Torah. Of them all, only Jacob and Yeshua could read or write their names. I was sure. That Johanna could too. That Yeshua had taught her never occurred to me, even among us, even among the highest families. Few women could read or write. But my lifelong devotion to Yeshua must have given Miriam some hope, and my hurrying down to Judea to search for him had surely added to it. And as for my sins, no real woman is ever truly or deeply offended by male sinfulness, with the sole exception of infidelity to her fair self, which, without knowing it consciously, was how Johanna looked upon my behavior, hence her fury. Women, my friend, are merciless toward the frailties of their own sex, while on ours they cast a most indulgent eye, one of the wise provisions of benevolent nature, I believe. "Nathan," Miriam said, now slowly, "are you serious?" "Absolutely," I said. She went on looking at me. Then she said, "You are a Bainim Mathia of the house of Mattathiah, Nathan, the greatest in all Galilee." "Hardly the greatest," I said. "Yes, the greatest. And your mother is Beth Boethus, the highest priestless family." "So?" I said. "You're very rich. We're poor, ignorant." "Mother, stop it," Shimeon said. "Haven't we been shamed enough today? I tell you, Nathan, clearly, I'm opposed. You frequent the Roman Epitropus. You're his wife's lover. You made a scandal with the harlot Chelem that I looked him straight in the eye. Here I had him and Yehuda both. Not Yosi. Yosi was too young, too timid, too shy, All right, Shimeon, you're opposed. And you, Yehuda?" "Opposed," Yehuda said. "And you, Yosi?" I don't know, Nathan," Yosi faltered. "People say—" "Too damn much," I said. "So now, let's have this out. Yeshua's the head of your family. since I must remind you, is not opposed to my marrying Johanna. I know that because I asked him first. He merely asked that I try from now on to lead a clean life, which I mean to do." "Ha!" Shimeon said. "All right, Shimeon," I said. "You begin to tire, you know. Let's examine my sins. I eloped with the girl I loved, whose chastity was beyond question, and married her under our law. It's none of your filthy-minded business, but Helvi came virgin to my marriage bed. My sins with Shalom are totally non-existent. Whether you believe me or not, I did not father the child she lost at the games. I have never had carnal knowledge of her, nor of any harlot. Can you, either of you, say the same? All right, you don't believe me. Let us put the matter, then, upon another level. Shelomith left Nikos, Lupanar, and followed me throughout the land. Is it my sins that offend you, or your envy of them? You who waste half your wages and more at Nikos's place? Would you find me nearer to your approval if I had to seek Shalom there, and pay her for her favors, as you do your strumpets? And as for the one sin I do confess to that of Claudia, what boots it, really, of either of you? A woman love me enough to risk her high position and her life? And which, my dear Shimeon, calls for more gallantry, manhood, nerve? My dalliance with the Epitropus' wife, guarded by a full Roman legion, or yours with Akiba, the fishmongers, guarded by nobody, once her ancient half-blind husband is out of sight? Where's the keener sport, the greater danger, the possibility of truer delight? And you, Yehuda?" Yehuda raised his hand. "I withdraw my opposition," he said. "Don't shame me before my mother, Nathan." Miriam was glaring at them both. Fine thing, she began. "A pair of lechers. My sons, the whoremongers. I like this. I like it fine. Spending the money we need on harlots. Why, Miriam, my lady," I said, "leave them be. They're young, unmarried, and men. Don't expect sainthood of them." She turned upon me then, her eyes afire. You see, to her, I had already joined her family. I was her son-in-law, and she wasn't going to let me off any easier than the others. "And well does it seem, Nathan Bar Yehuda," she said, "that you're much too proud of your sins. I'll have to think well about this business of my Johanna's marrying you. Why, that was a little too much, and I lost my head. I'd had a bellyful of these prickly peasant yokels by then." "And I also, Miriam Ha Yosef," I said. "Or is it Miriam Ha Pantera?" "Oh, yes. Thinking's called for. Yuan is, after all, your daughter, and like all men, wifely fidelity is a virtue that I prize." Her lips went absolutely white. She bowed her head. Those 3 big oafs stood there like the great stunned oxen that they were. Then Shimeon recovered. I saw his hand snake for his knife. "Put that thing up, Shimeon," I said warily. "Beyond the fact that you wouldn't have a chance against me, I said another more important now. I won't fight you. If you can stomach killing a man who refuses to draw steel, go ahead. But I won't fight you. I can't." "Put it up, Shimeon," Miriam said. Her voice was toneless, dead. I did what I had to, then. I, of priestly rank, knelt in the dust before her, took her hand. "I've done many evil things in my life, my lady," I said, "but none more evil than this, none of which I am more ashamed." She stretched out her other hand and let it rest on my head. "Get up, my Get up, Nathan, she said. My son Nathan, who is impetuous, hot as fire, rash and a fool, but not wicked. The wicked never humble themselves, and you're willing to. And now tell me something. You say you're innocent of Shalom the harlot. Can you prove it? No, I said. I can't. But I swear it, by my mother's honor, by the ineffable name of God. Don't swear, she said, and now I saw again where Johanna got her dignity from. Swearing is a wickedness. I believe you. Now hear this, Nathan, for the first time and the last, from me in all your life, for this shall never be mentioned between us again. Neither could I prove my innocence of that which I was accused of, and it almost wrecked my life. Yet I was innocent. And being a woman, I suffered more. I'm suffering still. For that shadow almost cost me my husband's love, and has cost me my eldest sons. Because of it, Yeshua grew up strange. Mother, Yosef wept. You don't mean... She smiled at him tenderly, through the great rush and glitter and scald of her tears. Yes, Yossi, sweet Yossi, my son, who bears the name your father wouldn't give our firstborn because of this. Your mother was once young and giddy and a fool, but nothing more, nothing worse. I ask you to believe that, without proof, simply because you love me. Do you? Yes, mother, Yossi said at once. She turned to the others. And you, my sons? They hesitated, just a shade too long, before they muttered, Yes, mother. You poor devils, I thought. This is going to haunt you both lifelong. I went up to them. Let there be peace among us, my brothers, I said. When I am angry, my tongue flies much too free. I beg your pardon, both of you, right humbly. And I ask you to consider this, as men who've worked long hours at back-breaking tasks, and still, despite your labors, have suffered privation, want, and the scorn of those who hold you their inferiors. What real harm can come to the house of the Beinam Yosef by linking itself through marriage to the house of the Beinam Mattathiah? Even stupid as they were, that got to them. They wanted to go up. Here was the ladder. Who in Galilee would dare scorn a family any longer whose daughter had married into the house of Mattathiah? What doors would remain closed to them now? What opportunities couldn't this arrogant little gamecock of a brother-in-law, like him or not, provide them with the wealth at his command? Sheepishly, they grinned at me. You're right, Nathan, Shimeon said. All of us were a mite too hot with our talk. I welcome you into our family. And I, Yehuda said, Sheol and Gehenna, a man's a man, as you said. Our own robes are far from clean. Agreed. And here's my hand on it, brother. I took their hands. I even went further. I kissed them both, which startled them. They hadn't expected that from one so far above them. But the problem itself remained. After all, it wasn't Johanna's family I wanted to marry, but her sweet, wild self. I took Miriam's arm. Please, I said, walk apart with me a little, my lady. Mother, I must tell you. I must say. All right, she said. But you don't have to apologize more, Nathan. Let us forget all the hard words that have passed between us. Like you, I think you'll make my daughter happy, and I shall be proud to have you for my son. But tell me this, what does your uncle say? Have you asked him? Of course, he approves. You know how fond he is of Yeshua. He's all for it. Says Yuan will cure me of my wildness. And that's just the rub. What's the rub? Miriam said. Yuan, she despises me. I have a confession to make. I went to your place this morning. Of course I wanted to see her, but I didn't expect to find her alone. Or else I shouldn't have gone, I swear it. Actually, along with seeing her, I wanted to talk to Yeshua and the others about this business of repairing the carts. And I hope you'll forgive me, but she was so pretty and sweet that I kissed her. And she clapped you blind, Miriam said with a low, throaty chuckle. Would God she had, I groaned. Worse than that, she went, got water, and washed her lips. I see, Miriam said. That's grave, isn't it? She stood there thinking. Nathan, day after tomorrow, my cousin Tabitha's son is Marion, Rebecca, Beth, Jehoiakim, at Cana. You come. I extend the invitation now in their names. Johanna's one of the bridesmaids. Then we'll see. Of course, the wedding feast won't be much, because they're poor as we are, but I won't be interested in food, I said. Yuan's got me so terrified that... Good, Miriam laughed. That's the way it should be. Lord, but I'm tired. I turned at once. Yosei, I called. Bring Betos. Here. That's it. Now help your mother up on her. We came into Nazareth like that, with me walking, leading Bedu, and Miriam sitting side saddle, proudly like a queen. One of the dearest of a woman's pleasures is the opportunity to kill her neighbors with pure envy. And it was that opportunity I provided Miriam Ha-Yosef then. But as we turned into their street, Johanna came out of the house and stood there, looking at us. That is, she looked at the others. At me she glared. So, she whispered, you've won Mother over. Well, it won't do you any good. I can tell you that. Won't it, my lady wife-to-be? I said. Then I kissed her again, there before them all. This time she did slap me hard. I don't know which hurt my ears worse, her hot little hand or her brother's roars of laughter. But even that was progress of a sort. After all, at the wedding at Cana, I would make more. Chapter 17. The house of the Bainim Lameth was a little white house set down in the grove of cypresses and poplars just outside of Kfar Cana, the village of Cana. It was a very poor house, of very poor people. But now, with the afternoon sun on it, slanting through the trees, it was beautiful. I sat there in the yard next to Yeshua ben Yosef, and I was happy. I hadn't been happy in a long time, so the feeling frightened me. It was a good feeling, soft and warm and true, and I was afraid of it. Yeshu, I said, calling him by the Galilean dialectical corruption of his name that neither of us had used since we were children. He put his right hand on my shoulder, smiled at me, and said, No, Nathan, let's not talk about it any more. You said once that I would do what I had to. Don't you remember that?" "Yes," I said, and the happiness went away. "But they'll kill you, Yeshua. They'll put you in prison just like Yohanan." "They haven't killed him, at least," Yeshua said. "But they will," I said morosely. "They will." Then I saw Miriam. She was sitting with her cousin Tabitha, the mother of the groom. They were talking about me. I could see Miriam looking at me, and her face was filled with pride. She was giving me too much credit. The idea of sending over 2 wagon loads of ducks, geese, pigeons, chickens, fine wheaten bread and cakes, all sorts of vegetables and fruit, had been my uncle's, not mine. The other wagon he'd also sent was late. It was the one with the tall wine jars in it. Therefore, it had to go slowly, so that the jars wouldn't bang against one another and break. The only idea I had, besides that of making a present of 200 shekels to the bride and groom, I still had in my purse. It was a string of pearls, a very lovely string of pearls. I meant to give to Johanna, but I hadn't been able to get anywhere near her. Every time I'd started in her direction, she had turned away with an angry toss of her head. Yeshua saw me looking at her now and smiled. "Let her alone a while, Nathan," he said. "I know my little sister. It's going to be all right." "But she hates me," I said. He laughed then. "And you're supposed to know so much about women," he said. I looked at Johanna. She had very long legs, and was as slim and as graceful as a gazelle. Her hair was just like Shelomith's. The wind was in it now, blowing it about her small, heart-shaped face that wasn't pretty but was something else, something better than pretty, something very fine and true. I loved her very much, mainly because she rebuffed me, and I was afraid of that feeling too. Then Miriam got up from beside her cousin, Tabitha, the mother of the bridegroom, and came over to us. I could see the expression of worry on her face before she got to us. "Yesu," she said at once, "there's no more wine." I wasn't surprised. Tabitha was a widow, and Boaz ben Lameth, Tabitha's son, a small holder. They were barely able to make ends meet with land they owned, in spite of which Boaz, driven by the hungers of the flesh, had to get himself married, and soon there'd be a dozen mouths to feed on a farm that now couldn't decently support 2. Yeshua looked at his mother, and his gaze darkened. His dislike of Miriam had deepened. I saw that very clearly. "Woman," he said evenly, "why turn to me? My time hasn't yet come." I stared at him. To address his mother as woman was plain, downright rude. But I kept my mouth shut. Today I couldn't afford to quarrel with either of them. Miriam's face tightened. But when she spoke, her voice was as even as his had been, as controlled. "Something must be done," she said. "Thanks to Nathan, there's more to eat than even this mob will be able to pack away in a week. Naturally, Boaz and Cousin Tabitha didn't figure on so many coming, and they wouldn't have either if it weren't." She looked at me and stopped. She didn't dare say her thought. The bulk of the countryside had come out of curiosity to see either Yeshua or me. They'd come to see Yeshua because on yesterday he'd healed the boy of epileptic fits. Oh yes, he could do that. He could do a great many things that are difficult to explain. If you insist upon calling miraculous any phenomena we don't know the explanation for, I'll grant you that. By that definition, he could work miracles. But don't try to tell me there were no explanations. He himself always denied that. He said that when he cured a sick man, it was because that man had faith. He was right. That was the root of all his powers. Later on, when the occasion arises, I'll give you my theory on how his powers worked. And also, since you say that you respect the truth, that to you it is the highest good, of how a number of wonders he didn't do at all came to be attributed to him. But they'd also come to see me for reasons on the opposite end of the scale of human values. Miriam, poor dear, hadn't been able to resist bragging that I was going to marry Johanna, which, considering the class distinctions between us, was a greater wonder than any of Yeshua's in the minds of the Galilean country people. Besides, my absolutely horrendous reputation as monachus and scortator, adulterer, and whorehopper had the woman at least fairly panting to eye me, and had caused not a few quarrels, one or two of which had already extended to the administration of a husbandly beating. Be that as it may, the result of my presence and Yeshua's was that Boaz had been overwhelmed with uninvited guests, whom our traditions of hospitality and his own prickly Galilean pride, being what they were, he couldn't turn away. My uncle's generosity with provisions for the banquet had solved half the problem for him, but the slowness of the wine cart, which he didn't even know was coming, had aggravated the other half. Yeshua went on looking at his mother. He didn't even stand up as he should have, and I had already done. "All right," he said shortly. "I'll do what I can." Miriam turned to the servants. "Do whatever he tells you," she said. Then she went away and left us there. As soon as she'd gone, Boaz, the bridegroom, came over to us. I think he meant to appeal to me for help, but Yeshua didn't even give him time to open his mouth. "I know," he said, his voice harsh, metallic. "There's no more wine. Tell your people to fill the wine jars with water, Boaz." Boaz stared at him. He'd heard the story of the miracle too, but this command of Yeshua's puzzled him. It shouldn't have. Yeshua was in bad humor, so all he meant was that, lacking wine, the guests could damn well drink water as far as he was concerned. But then, at that very moment, I saw my uncle's cart with the full wine jars coming up the road. An unholy glee possessed me. I've always been like that. Nothing gives me greater joy than making sport of fools. "Fill 'em up, Boaz," I said. "Water never hurt anybody." He turned away, gave the orders to his hired hands. I saw them lugging the wine jars off around the side of the house. After a while they came back, empty-handed, and started toward their master. Boaz waved them away angrily. But by then, my uncle's cart was almost there. The well itself was behind the house, so that you couldn't see it from where Boaz and Rebekah Bath Jehoiakim, his new bride, sat with their guests. And I, aided by all the wine I'd drunk, had already seen the possibilities in that. I got up, went through the gate, and down the road to meet my uncle's cart. I stopped it before it got to the gate, where it could have been seen by Boaz or some of the guests, and spoke to my uncle's people. I didn't explain anything to them. I simply told them to drive the wagon on down the road until they were past the house, and to bring the wine jars in through the rear gate. It seemed reasonable enough to them, and even if it hadn't, given the fact that a favorite saying among the people on Uncle Hezron's place was, "The young master is as crazy as a body can get and still escape being chained up," they would have done it without question anyhow. They took the wine jars down one by one and carried them to the well. And as I told them to, every time they put a wine jar down, they picked up one of Boaz's jars and was filled with water, and carried it back out to the wagon. They kept that up until all the jars had been exchanged, and even after that, they went on bringing jars. Only now they weren't taking any away because there had been more jars on the cart than Boaz had in the first place. When they had finished, I gave them each a drachma and sent them on their way. Then I went back outside and stood in the road at a place far enough away from the house that I could see both the banquet tables and the well at the same time by merely turning my head a little, which wasn't possible inside the garden. Poor Boaz was at the table nursing along the wine that was left in the pitchers, but it gave out in spite of all his efforts. His face was pitiful. You have no idea what a proud people even the poorest of Galileans are. That pride, and I've already given you an example of it in the way Johanna's brothers had opposed at first the very idea of my becoming betrothed to her, was tormenting poor Boaz now. He picked up a pair of pitchers and turned away from the table, where his fair Rebecca sat prettily, blushing among their guests. And as he started down the path toward the wall, his gait was shambling. I think the reason he didn't send one off the help, as he ordinarily would have, to fill those pitchers was because he was still desperately trying to think of something, some ruse, some trick to stave off disaster. I watched him until he reached the wine jars. There he hesitated. I suppose he was hoping against hope that the residue clinging to the inside walls of the jars would color the water enough so that the guest wouldn't notice the difference. But realizing there was no help for it, he tilted the jar and poured. When he saw the color of the liquid squirting from the mouth of the jar, he almost dropped the pitcher. The wine Uncle Hezron had sent us was of the very best vintage, so much darker and richer than the pale vinegary and probably water brew that Boaz had been inflicting upon us before, that our host could see at a glance how different it was. Nevertheless, being a peasant, with all a peasant's innate suspiciousness of mind, he tasted it. Then he turned and stared at Yeshua. When I saw what was in his face then, the awe, the wonder, the worship, I was a little ashamed of the trick I'd played. So I stepped up to the fence quickly and said, "Don't tell anyone, Boaz. He wouldn't like it." Boaz turned to me, his young, dull, ox-like Galilean face actually working from emotion. "But how?" he got up. "In heaven's name, young master, how?" I looked him straight in the eye with long-faced gravity and said, "He has great powers. Now go serve your guests. They're parched." He lifted up his head and called to the servants, "Bring pitchers." The hired hands came with the pitchers. One of them actually dropped and broke his when he saw what was coming out of the jars that he himself had poured water into. Boaz swore at them fiercely, swore he'd have their hides off them in strips if they opened their mouths about what had happened. But as they turned away to carry the brimming pitchers back to the tables, I could hear certain words afloat on the current of their murmurings. Sign, wonder, miracle. The very first pitcher, naturally, they put down before Nathaniel bar Talmai, Boaz's best friend, and the younger brother of that worthless wine, Yohanan bar Talmai, whom I had beaten in the long race at Tiberias on the occasion that I first met my Helvetia. I say naturally because young bar Talmai, a good sort, vastly different from his brother, had been chosen symposiarch, or master of the revels, one of your customs we'd adapted, of course. With a grin, Nathaniel bar Talmai lifted it to his lips, drank deep. Then he roared out, Boaz, you trickster! Blessed if I can understand you. Everyone serves the best brew first, and waits till the crowd's too drunk to tell a hoe from a handcart before bringing on the cheap stuff. But Gehenna, shrivel my thirsty soul if you haven't saved the good wine for the last. I saw Yeshua's tasting and the contents of his cup. He raised his eyes and stared at me. I grinned at him and went on about my way. I knew that if I went anywhere near him, he'd have the truth out of me in less than a minute. I never could lie to him, and I never met anyone else who could either. But my diabolical sense of humor, aided and abetted by all the wine I'd already put away, unmixed with enough solid food to absorb its effects, just wouldn't let me spoil that really first-class Galilean-style miracle so soon. Within a quarter of an hour or less, my Uncle Hezron's excellent brew was beginning to have its effect upon the gathering. That wedding feast was becoming decidedly gay. As for me, I was feeling very little pain myself. The good ruby-colored wine, pooling warm and soft inside my belly, was making me amorous. Never, I confess, a difficult feat in those days. So I went in search of Johanna. I found her easily enough, but unfortunately, for my by then distinctly censurable intentions, but surely, fortunately, for my future, I found her surrounded by a group of girls. From the sullen expression on her face, I could tell that those Galilean Almahim were plaguing her. At once it came to me it would be very useful to overhear what was being said, both from her friends' remarks and from her responses to them. I was fairly sure of being able to get some idea of where I stood with my darling. So I moved noiselessly around the grape arbor until I was just back of them. Well, one of them laughed, if you don't want him, Una, darling, you can give him to me. Is he ever the handsome thing? All right, Johanna said. Take him. Why, Una, they caroused. You don't mean that, and you know it. Of course I mean it, she said furiously. He's awful. I wouldn't marry him if he were the last man on earth, they chanted, and dissolved into great gales of silvery feminine laughter. Well, I wouldn't, Johanna said. The one who had spoke first, a bold and buxom country wench, whom on any other occasion, except this one, I should already have sneaked away to the nearest straw heap, put her arm about Johanna's neck. Now, Una, honey, she said, grinning, I wouldn't go around tempting Providence like that. Not to mention this pack of panting females you call your girlfriends, which includes me. If he was mine, I wouldn't leave him alone with any woman here for 5 minutes flat, including the rabbi's wife. And if I had to, I'd make sure she still had her ketoneth on when I got back. Johanna stared at her. You know, Rhoda, she said, I think you have a perfectly filthy mind. Don't I, though? Rhoda laughed. That's why, 9 times out of 10, what I think is so. Now, come on, Una. Tell us all about him. Bet when he kisses you, your toes curl up. They do not, Johanna said. This time the shrieks of girlish laughter split the sky. Tears of pure exasperation stood in Johanna's eyes. She had a great deal of Yeshua's absolute simplicity. She was no match for Rhoda in this kind of a contest. Perhaps she wasn't a match for any of them on that level. But in another way, she was. On her own high plateau of simplicity, purity, she was a match for anybody, as she proceeded to prove. She said very, very quietly, I have never even kissed a boy, or let a boy kiss me, except him, except Nathan, and he did it by force. And afterward, I went in and got water and washed my mouth in front of him. Lord, Una, one of the others said, if he ever kissed me, I'd never wash. At least not till he did it again. I'd go round with my hand over my mouth, just trying to keep it there. I saw Johanna's great dark eyes soften and then turn inward. My blood went singing along my veins with joy. But she didn't say her thought. Well, I did wash, Dorcas, she said, and I won't marry him, ever. Because of his women, Rhoda said. Lord, Una, you are ever a fool. You shut up, Rhoda, Johanna flared. You're a bad, wicked girl yourself, and I... No, I'm not, honey, Rhoda said calmly. More's the pity. Sometimes I wish I were, but I'm not. I've just got a tongue that's loose on both ends and hinged in the middle, that's all. But if I lived somewhere else, up at Jerusalem, say, I wouldn't bet a temple shekel on my virtue. Here, I'm a good girl, for the same reason every one of us is, except maybe you, and that's because I've got sense enough not to want to end up in a lupanor. You tell me, Una, who could get away with being bad in a Galilean kafir? Wasn't for that, I'd take your Nathan by the ears or the beard and lead him off into the woods as soon as it gets dark. I think you're horrid, Johanna said. And I think she's truthful, the one called Dorcas said soberly. And another girl said, sometimes it's awful waiting, isn't it? That was the first time in my life I'd heard girls talk when they didn't know there was a man around. It was proving, instructive. Johanna's eyes darted from one face to another. I could see she was shocked, but from the reflective expression on her face, I could see that a goodly part of that shock was that off recognition. She had been tormenting herself, as the innocent always do, accusing her warm and lyrical blood of depravity because of its response to me. It is, Bernice. It is, Rhoda said. But what else can we do? Being a woman's plain rotten. See a boy who sets you wild, and you can't walk up to him and say, Look, Nathan, darling, how's about you and me coming to an understanding? Stop saying Nathan, Bernice said. Stop saying Nathan. After all, he is Una's and... No, he's not, Johanna said. He's a bad, wicked man, and Rhoda threw back her head and laughed aloud. And what more could you want, Una? She chuckled. Listen to your wild, wicked, little old friend Rhoda. You know what's the one thing worse than a bad man? No, Johanna said. A good man, Rhoda said. I don't understand you, Johanna said. No, you don't, Lambie. Let's see if I can explain it to you in a way that won't shock you too much. Oh, Sheol. Take Boaz, for instance. He's a good boy. Never had time, nor the money, nor the nerve to be anything else. Tied to his mother's apron strings up until now. Good. No question about it. But I, and she shuddered visibly, would sure hate to be in Becca's place tonight. An oaf. A clumsy oaf. Scared spitless. A Galilean yokel. Ugh! They were all staring at her, their mouths making delicious little O's of horrified fascination. Now take your Nathan. Oh, Sheol and Gehenna both, Una. But if you really don't want him, give him to me. I'd never run away from a man who can look out of the corner of one eye and have the granddaughter of a Roman emperor following him around like a pet lapdog. She's a bad woman too, Johanna said. And besides, there's Shalom the harlot. That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? So, all right. You know my oldest brother, Toma, don't you? Well, he was plenty wild until he got married and settled down. He used to frequent girls like Shalom, and you know what he said. No, all the others breathed. That they hate men. That they've seen so much, been so tormented and abused by men that they can't stand 'em. And here you have Shalom, the harlot. So what happens, Una? Shalom's awfully pretty. Sheol, she's beautiful. Let's be fair. She knows all about men, honey lamb. She's not just guessing, the way I am, plague take it. She's had her fill of the creatures. And what happens? What? The girl called Dorcas said. She leaves the lupanar and follows him up to Caesarea when the Romans arrested him. After that, she's right behind him every living place he goes. And even after he took up with the Epitropus wife, she couldn't forget him. I'd say that when a girl like Shalom, who knows more about men than any of us will ever learn, throws herself headfirst down a flight of 20 stairs because she thinks he's been killed, that man's got something little Rhoda is perfectly willing to partake of. And if that's what you call bad, Una, honey, you're looking at the original Scarlet Woman straight out of the Holy Scriptures. Well, the girl called Bernice said, in a subtly insinuating tone of voice that combined sober reflection with the barest hint of mockery of doubt. Couldn't it have been Rhoda, dear, that she just didn't want to see the father of the child she was carrying killed? I wasn't prepared for what happened next, nor were any of them. Johanna's eyes took fire. I didn't even see her hand move. But she slapped Bernice so hard that if Rhoda and Dorcas between them hadn't caught her, dear Bernice of the poisonous tongue would have surely measured her length upon the ground. Then Johanna whirled and ran away from there, as though pursued by all the fiends from Sheol. The girls stood staring at her, appalled. But I didn't. I pushed my way through the vines and started after her. When they saw me, they let out a flute run of squeals. Your pardons, fair virgins of Galilee, I mocked and ran down the path that Johanna had taken. Then I saw her. She was bending over the fence by the road and crying in a way I'd seen only one other woman cry. Shalom. The way I'd sworn I never wanted to see anyone cry again. I started toward her, slowly, before I got to where she was. I saw another thing, one of the gentle farmers. Galilee was full of foreigners, you know, so much so that at times we Jews were actually outnumbered there, had sent his swineherd up the road to drive home his pigs. I wondered bitterly if the bastard had had to come that way, or whether, having heard of the wedding, he'd offered us this deliberate insult to our customs and our laws. But then I pushed the matter from my mind and went up to where Johanna bent over the gate, fighting back what were, I saw now, spasms of actual nausea. "You on," I whispered. She straightened up, and what was in her eyes now was horror, combined with loathing. "Don't touch me," she said. "Please don't touch me, Nathan." "You on," I groaned. "If you do, I'll kill myself, because I'd never be clean again. I didn't know about the child, that it was yours, I mean, and I was beginning to let myself like you a little. You monster. You despoiler of women. Killer of babies. Leave me, Nathan. Go away. I beg you, please." I took the case with the necklace out of the purse that swung from my belt. I laid it very carefully on the top rail of the fence within her reach. "A gift in parting, then, Johanna," I said. "Something to remember me by." Then I turned away. As I did so, I saw Yeshua's coming toward us. He looked angry. His face was set and stern. I supposed he thought I'd been up to my usual kind of mischief. He had none of the clairvoyance your scribes attribute to him now. In fact, he could be exasperatingly dense at times. But then he looked past me, and I saw his expression change. He was staring at his sister. I half turned. Johanna had opened the case. She had that string of pearls in her hands. She was fondling them tenderly, her eyes veiled by her long lashes, her mouth a quiver. They lay between her fingers like moon mist, milky blue-white and shimmering. She stood there like that, holding them with love and longing, cupped between her hands in the dead-stopped hiatus, that absolute suspension of time, until finally she raised her head and saw me staring at her. Something broke up behind her eyes, shattered into the jagged slivers of unutterable pain and grief. Her mouth made a grimace that even in the unmatched purity of her face was distorted, ugly. She looked at me, then down at the string of pearls. Her arm came back, made a blur moving. The pearls, for one brief flicker of an instant, made an incredibly lovely, perfect oval on the hard, bright evening air. Then they struck the road. The string broke. They bounced, rolled, scattered, balls of moonlight, dancing, making a loveliness for another slightly longer instant before they were trampled under the feet of the onrushing swine. Yes, that's where he got it from. The best, the most telling of his metaphors. But of course, I didn't know that then. What I felt at the moment has no words, except to say that too was one of the times I died. I walked back from there. I went very fast without looking back. It was a pity I didn't. For if I had, I should have seen Yeshua holding his little sister in his arms. talking to her very gently. And what he said to her was the very best defense I could have had. He told her what Shulamith herself had confessed to him about her relations with me, adding, "She didn't lie, Johanna. Have you ever known anyone who could lie to me when I looked them straight in the face?" Only I did not know that then, and a fat lot of good it would have done me if I had. That was one of those days when gratuitous evil rains down from heaven, the kind on which a man is ill-advised even to get out of bed. Because before I got to the part of the fence to which I'd left Bidou tied, I saw a whole century of Samaritan legionaries from the cohors Sebastinorum, of course, coming up the road, and in their midst that splendid traveling cart drawn by 8 snow-white mules. I didn't even need to see that it was canopied with the finest silk, nor that the emblem on the ring pole of that canopy was that of the procurator. I knew with icy, dead-sick certainty that Pilatus wasn't in that cart. He never traveled in that effeminate sort of luxury. He was proud of his skill as an equestrian. He always rode a magnificent bay. No, it had to be Claudia. And I was ruined. I'd lost Johanna now, lost her forever. The centurion leading the Sebastians stopped before the gate. He said, in the perfect Aramaic of a man native to this land, "Is Nathan Bar Yehuda here?" I came forward then. Just before I reached the cart, I looked back. Yeshua's hand had come around the house with us. Yeshua had come around the house with his arm about Johanna. They both stopped dead. Then one of the Sebastians threw the canopy back, and Claudia stepped down from the cart. She was absolutely gorgeous. She was coiffed, perfumed, painted so that only one as close to her as I was could see Sheol and Tartarus both screaming in her eyes. I've come to your wedding, Nathan," she said. "Aren't you going to present me to your bride?" I smiled at her then. It cost me agony, but I managed it. "You've been a trifle misinformed, my lady Claudia," I said. "A wedding it is, but not mine. Come, I'll present you both, the bride and groom." She stared at me. I could see her mouth quiver. "Don't lie to me, Nathan," she said. I took her by the arm, led her to the table. Nobody was breathing, especially not my prospective mother-in-law. Miriam's broad face was turning slowly purple with the purest, most exquisite rage. But she didn't say anything. The silence was absolute. Even the wind had died. "Boaz, my friend," I said easily, because I was beginning to enjoy myself by then. The whole thing was so criminally, idiotically ironic that it awoke the night-black devilish humor in me. "The fair Rebecca, your wedding, has been singularly honored. May I present my lady, Claudia, wife of the Epitrophus." Boaz almost bumped his head on the ground. Rebecca got up from her place, her head as white as death. She bowed too. Claudia looked at them. Then she said, in the slow, halting Aramaic, that I'd begun to teach her, "You are bride and groom, This is your wedding?" "Yes, my lady," Boaz said. "There is a certain advantage to having been born to the purple." Claudia showed it now. She smiled, said haltingly, "May I, a cup, have to drink your healths?" Boaz almost knocked the table over, reaching for that pitcher. He spilt the wine all over everything, filling the cup. "You, too?" Claudia said, nodding toward Rebecca. "And your husband, and Nathan, all of us." I lifted my cup. Then I saw Johanna's face. It was whiter than the snows atop Mount Hebron. The tears were a flood on her cheeks. But she wasn't even aware that she was crying. She was staring at Claudia, as one might stare at the axe which will end one's life, just before the executioner brings it whistling down. I tore my gaze away, looked back at Claudia. She put her cup down, took off the spray of emeralds she wore about her throat. They were worth more than my Uncle Hezron's whole estate. Then she dropped them into her cup, held it out to Rebecca. "Now you." She halted. "Nathan," she said, in her swift, idiomatic Greek. "How does one say 'change with me' in Aramaic?" I told her. "Now, you change with me, my dear," she said to Rebecca. "It's a gift," I said to Rebecca. "Take it. You must. You can't afford the wife of the representative of Caesar." "You can't offend her." Rebecca drained the cup, stood there, peering into it. Claudia put out her hand, took the cup from her, fished the dripping necklace out of it, fastened it about Rebecca's neck with her own slim, semi-divine hands. And thus did Boaz ben Lameth and his bride become the greatest landowners in that part of Galilee. The money they sold that gaudy bauble for was enough to buy them a latifundium bigger than my uncle's. "You've been plaguing me for months now for an account of Yeshua's miracles. Well, how do you like mine? The two I'd perform, or cause, that day really weren't too bad for a beginner. Now were they?" I thank you, great lady," Rebecca wept. "It is nothing," Claudia said. Then turning to me, she switched into Greek. "I'd give more than that. I'd give all the jewels in this world for this relief. Only," she lifted her regal little head, and her fine nostrils flared, "it isn't going to last very long, I see. That's the one, isn't it? The lovely little creature who's devouring you with her eyes?" "Yes," I said, "that's the one." "And that beautiful, beautiful man beside her?" "Oh, Nathan, he looks just like you." "Her brother," I said. "Call them over," Claudia said. "No," I said like that, flatly. "Don't then," Claudia said, and strolled gracefully to where they were. "I shall be spared Sheol when I die, for I have had it on this earth." In that long moment Claudia stood there staring into Johanna's face. "I paid fourfold for every sin I've ever done, and stored up pardons for all I'll ever do." "You," Claudia said, "are Nathan's girl?" Johanna didn't answer her. By that time, I was at Claudia's side. "No," I said slowly in Aramaic. "She's not, Claudia." "I'd hoped so. I should have given my life to make it so. But now I've spoiled it, Claudia said. We've spoiled it, I said sadly. You and I, and maybe even God. Johanna doesn't look kindly upon adulterers, my dear. Being what she is, an angel, she can't comprehend the ease with which mere mortals fall into sin. I didn't understand that, Claudia said in Greek. I said it over again, in that tongue. Johanna was staring at me in awe. Claudia reached out suddenly and took her hand. Listen, she said. Don't be a fool. One life is all, is very short. Happiness is like emeralds, like pearls, precious. He is a god. I saw Yeshua's eyes speak fire at that. Yes, a god. No one else is, can be like him, sinner or not, bad or not. Doesn't matter. 1 hour, his love worth eternity without. Worth Tartarus, no. Sheol, forever. You understand? Johanna nodded dumbly. She saw how Claudia was crying now, and she was too astonished to speak. Make him happy, girl. Him I cannot have. So tonight I die. The cup's prepared. No more in your way. Without him, life is nothing. No taste. Bad. Better to die. Then Yeshua's voice came over to us, measured and slow. No, he said. You haven't that right. God promised happiness to no one in this world, my lady. Peace, yes. A peace beyond all understanding. But your life isn't yours to take. You can't destroy yourself, nor destroy Nathan the way you're doing now. For you, even you, are a child of God, put into this world to do good. She turned to me, her eyes grown great in her face. Nathan, she said, I don't know your language. Not really. Not beyond the little you've taught me. But how is it that I understand every word, every single word he says, just as if he were speaking Greek? I don't know, I said. Men call him a wonder worker, a prophet, but I don't know. Listen to him, child. She turned, then stretched out her lovely hands and took Yeshua's arm impulsively. Come, master, she said in Greek. Let's go over there under the trees, where you can sit and talk to me. Say wondrous words in your wondrous voice. That heals me, heals my heart. Come. Yeshua smiled at her. I would have sworn he understood her. Very well, newborn daughter of God, he said. I was left there, staring at Johanna. Yuan, I whispered. My brother says that the child wasn't yours, Nathan, she said. It wasn't, I said. And that you were never guilty of Shalom. To that extent, no, I said. In that, I was unjust then, she whispered. I'm sorry, Nathan. I put out my arms to her. She stiffened, backed away. No, she said. Why not? I said. The man I wed must belong to me, she said. I won't share him with anyone, not even princesses who come with troops and banners. Besides, She is very beautiful, Nathan. I understand now why you love her. I'm not. I'm homely. Besides, I'm only a poor Haaretz girl who can only stand here with my mouth open, gaping like a fool, while you chatter away in all the tongues spoken of man. She is very beautiful, and even if I were silly enough to wed you, you'd never be mine. Not really. And what, Yuan? I said. I don't think I could stand that. My heart would break. I'd die. You wouldn't have to stand it, I said. There's no one but you. No one in this world. Not Shalom, not Claudia, no one. Please, Johanna. She went on looking at me. Then she said, I don't know. I'm afraid, Nathan. Would you wait until after next Pesach? Not this Passover. The next one. But Yuan, that's more than a year from now. I know. And even then, I promise you nothing. And I don't ask you to promise me anything either. If you see another girl you can love, you're free to... Her voice choked off, died. Am I little Yuan? I said. Oh, I don't know, she wailed. I'm so confused. It's been an awful day. But I need time, Nathan, to get to know you, to stop being afraid, if I can. And you don't know me either. Maybe, when you do, you won't. Love you? Ask me to stop breathing, Yuan. Then I put my arms around her, and suddenly, wildly, she began to cry. Yuan, I said. No, Nathan. Those pearls, they were so beautiful, and those awful old smelly pigs trampled them. Oh, Nathan. I'll bring you another set as soon as I can. Yuan. Next week. I have to go to Caesarea for them, so... No, she said fiercely. Not Caesarea, Nathan. Why not, I said. Because that's where she lives, and I hate her. I hate her. And that's grave, isn't it? I haven't any right to hate her. Only she's so beautiful, and she has everything in the world, and still she comes swooping down like a she-hawk on the barnyard to take... What? I said. You! She whispered, and hid her face against my breast. And you don't want her to? I teased. No, I don't want her to. Nathan, don't buy me any more pearls. I don't want them. They wouldn't be the same. I only want those. The ones I threw away. Those are ruined, I'm afraid, I said. Doesn't matter. I don't want any more. Now turn me loose, my Yuan said. Why? I said. When you hold me, I feel queer. I don't like the way I feel, so turn me loose. Kiss me, I said. No! Why not, Yuan? Because that would make the queer feeling worse. Please, Nathan, let go of me. Elohim, give me the patience, I said, and opened my arms. She stood there looking at me, and the evening wind was in her hair, blowing it about her face. Then she turned and ran, wildly like a child, back to where the others were. And one thing more. I saw Claudia only once more after that day, on a terrible errand that did not lend itself to love. She removed herself very quietly and completely from my life, nor to my vast astonishment and the world's did she take any other lovers. Her behavior became all a young Roman's matron's should have been, even by the austere standards of the antique Republican days, before wealth and world dominion had corrupted that conquering people beyond repair. You've written me repeatedly for details of the signs and wonders that your Mashiach, your Christos, Yeshua HaNotzri performed. I give you that one. There you have a miracle of the truest sort. For nothing is harder to change than is the human heart.